Welcome to Washington Football Week with your host, one half of that dynamic duo, Sean Spencer, and South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer.
Don't play us if you're undefeated.
Where we celebrate past success while looking to a bright future. There's a youth movement in Washington, and they're ready to take the reins, led by a fire coach. It's a new day, a new dawn, no longer the laughing stock. It's time to take command.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer led by a fiery coach, Ron Rivera. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy, Sean Spencer, one half of that dynamic duo that is Let's Talk Football. And it is Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Hump Day! And for all my lovers out there, happy Valentine's Day. Hope you're doing something nice with your lady. Hope you're taking care of her. If you're alone, hey, take yourself out. Do something for you. Come on now. But look, I'm with my guy right here.
They could be doing something with their man. You know. Come on now. Support everyone. Love is love. I'm just putting you on the spot.
With and without. Yo, I gotta shout out my guy, South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer. What up, Will?
Sean, I was just updating my agenda. Last time we came on was the 4th of January. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
if that's right, maybe we didn't. Maybe we went on sometime in between there, and I didn't have notes. But it's been a long time, so good to see you again.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. What's going on? Nathan saying, "What's up, gentlemen?"
Nathan, I sent you a message on Twitter, man. You can take a look at it. It's not good.
Uh-oh.
Has to do with Maryland basketball. It's not good.
Oh yeah. Speaking of teams losing, North Carolina. Oh, good. Anyways, shout out to Nathan Snell. He actually hit me up on that very topic about, we haven't been on in a while. He was like, what happened? The last couple games of the season, we just dropped off.
Yeah.
It's a long season, Nate. It's a long year, but you're absolutely right. It's been a while. We are back. What is going on, Misador? Man, we appreciate you guys being here with us. Washington Football Weekly. There's so much to talk about. Real quick, I do want to do this. It's kind of bittersweet. I want to, on one side, congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey, Andy Reid. These guys have done it. 3 championships in, a 4 or 5 year span. I mean, 6 years. Mahomes' first 6 years, the worst that he's done is the AFC Championship game. Like, it's crazy.
Ridiculous.
It's absolutely crazy when you think about it. But the bitter part, they had their victory parade today, and unfortunately, there was a couple shooters. We don't necessarily know exactly what happened. We do know, unfortunately, one person has passed away, and I believe 22 people, some kind of injuries or anything. So we definitely want to send our prayers to those families affected and the one that lost their lives. This ain't any political thing or anything, but this crap's got to stop.
Yes.
If we can't even go to these parades where there was 90 police officers on hand, something's wrong. I know this was kind of open, an open situation where, people can just come in and you can't check everybody. But at the same time, there were kids at this place. You know what I mean? And
Sean, it scares the living shit out of us. I'm sorry to curse on your show that our state is trying to push an open carry, no CWP requirements like this for reasons just like this. You can't control people. You can't control those that have crazy ideas, and we don't need to be giving them this access like this. It's ridiculous that we continue to have this. And, to hear that the governor was scared running for his life when that dude has his pockets pumped by the NRA, I hope you were scared. And I hope you take a long lesson in your leadership and how crappy a person you are for allowing stuff like this to happen. It's awful.
It is. And I want to say that the worst part about this is the loss of life and all those that have been affected. Unfortunately, though, Will, the worst part about this is how kind of numb we're all getting to it. How it's second nature. One of the things that I heard today was that the police kind of already had an active shooter, situation. They already had, this stuff all lined up. They knew what to do because, unfortunately, it happened so daggone much, man.
Mm-hmm.
They closed down today, Red Snow Day, just for the parade.
Right. Give everyone a chance to celebrate. And by all means, a few people ruined it from everyone, but it's how they're able to ruin it. It's what access do they have. It's awful.
Right. Absolutely. So look, we definitely wanted to shout them out, and it does put a kind of a damper on the celebration, but let's not belittle the fact that the Chiefs, hey, they're on top of the mountain right now. They're somewhere that Washington would like to be. Let's go ahead, if we can, and move on. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we haven't been here in a while. The last time you saw us, we were doing our dissertation on Ron Rivera, his entire tenure and his exit. He is no longer with us, no matter what the opening video says. We have a new head coach, ladies and gentlemen, and Will, this guy was not too far from us. Right in the division, the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys is hired by the Washington Commanders, Dan Quinn. He's our new head coach. We know about all the changes and everything that's coming. But first and foremost, when you first heard this, Will, what were your thoughts, man? What was your reaction?
It's interesting. I kind of thought he might be one of the leading candidates, the whole time. So I guess I wasn't surprised, but I also was slightly excited. To me, it's he's not the most exciting hires out there when it comes to something. He's not the under 40 type hire, but I think he's really steady. And I think he's going to prove, we've got some things that are showing that he's going to prove to be that he very well may have been the right hire for them, for this team right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that honestly was one of my first thoughts, is that, a lot of these guys that we were looking at were young and they were the flashy, new toy or whatever. And that does seem great to get the latest, nicest thing. But then I thought about, what was EB last year? You know what I mean? Mind you, he didn't get, hired at different jobs that he had taken, but still, this time last year, we're just like, how in the world can we get somebody like EB fresh off a Super Bowl victory? You know what I mean? And we see how that panned out. But I think, to your point, I mean, we know a lot of people are saying, oh, this is Ron Rivera 2.0. But I think just in the same way Ron Rivera was kind of perfect for that time, with the pandemic, Dan Snyder, and everything going on, I think equally Dan Quinn might be perfect for this time, where you do have a lot of newness to the franchise, new owner, new coach, obviously a lot of other new coaches. Who knows, maybe new quarterback, new other players. And it almost makes you kind of think, okay, we needed a steady hand in this, somebody that's been around before. He's been to, the playoffs, championships, all that stuff. And we've seen what he did with Dallas in that defense, but now he's our head guy. But Will, still, he did come from Dallas, and albeit he crushed us the times that he played us, when it comes to somebody tough, and we talked about this when he was just one of the names on the list, when it comes to these tougher teams or the clutch moments, he's not getting it. What's the difference between him as the DC or between him as coach in the past? What's different now?
Well, I think you had a chance to learn a little bit, and I think this also shows how he got the job. We had heard after his first interview that he very much impressed, and that he was, while everyone thought Ben Johnson was the leading candidate, they also said, do not forget about Dan Quinn. He is way up there. And I think he impressed with his leadership, and his experience. And the fact that in his press conference, he talked about how when he was removed from Atlanta, he had an outside company come in and consult and talk to him about this is what went right, this is what you did wrong, so he could kind of learn when I have that next shot, I can do better. Because let's think about it. I mean, he took a team to the Super Bowl. All right. Like, that's not a bad first run, as a head coach. You could say the same thing about Ron Rivera. Yes, you can. But he had some success in Atlanta. I think when Kyle Shanahan left and Matt LaFleur left, that hurt the offense. And then they got some, I think his voice ran hollow in Atlanta by the time the pandemic happened and he was let go. But I think he impressed them by saying he knows how to lead, and not just defense, but lead anybody. I believe that people called them saying Dan Quinn is a great coach. Dan Quinn is a great leader. This is a guy you want on your organization. I believe when people like Logan Paulson, who's a Redskin media guy, says, I loved playing under this guy. He had us all together. And then I think the big part about it is his ability to build a staff. We're going to get to some of the names he's compiled, but he did it in Atlanta too. He's the one who had Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Raheem Morris, Mike McDaniel. He had all those guys with him in Atlanta too. He's been around the league. He knows people. He knows how to build the staff. He's doing it here. And I just felt during his press conferences, there are times where he's not the CEO stand up there and sound good the way Ron sometimes could. But when you heard him talk ball, that's when I got excited. When he talked about, listen, we're going to be where our feet are. Listen, when I've got a defensive player, I want to make sure, what does that guy do well? And I need to exploit that. Yep. I was just like, thank you. Finally. Somebody who recognizes it's not my square peg. And where's you're the round hole. We're not going to fit together. He was like, I'm going to make this work. When he started talking coach speak in that press conference, that's when he got me fired up. When he was being CEO, I'm like, he's not the best CEO communicator, but in those interviews, he started talking about what he would do with the franchise and the defense and it got them excited.
Oh, absolutely. And hey, look, I fell in that kind of that. I don't want to call it a trap, but I fell in that trap, that motivation, that pump, like him talking about the guys and him talking about, Adam Peters and how we came together. But I think it's what you said that was the biggest thing for me, is that he did go back and look at what worked and what didn't work. And he looked at each of his destinations. I mean, obviously the Falcons, we know about that, but even when he moved on from Atlanta, even when he was at Dallas, his time there, he learned what worked. And one of the things that you talked about, Logan Paulson, that I love, those relationships. With him building those relationships, the things that we liked from Ron, his guys were his guys, everything, we're seeing that now. Dan Quinn's guys, they follow him. I mean, we'll see that in the coaching staff, but also it's just he brings a little bit more credibility, in my opinion. And it's just I think it's that time. It's right for it. But let's be honest, we're Washington fans. We've been here before. To Nathan's point, I have to see it, believe it. I've heard coaches talk like that, and actions don't follow.
Sure.
Same here.
Sure. Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy, how excited were we at his press conference?
Yeah. 365 days ago, we were here talking about, oh, look at Terry McLaurin's in there, and oh, look at Jahan. These guys are all high-fiving him, and he's talking to him, and it was all nice. It all seemed great. But maybe when he was talking about himself in the third person, we should have picked up something was a little funny.
Right. You know what impresses me, that as I've learned more about Dan Quinn, is you talked about learning evolution. The defense that he ran in Seattle with the Legion of Boom, it was not the same defense that he ran in Dallas. So this is not I'm Jack Del Rio. I've been a 2-time head coach based on what I know how to coach, and this is what we're going to run. It literally is him saying, what is the league like? What type of team do I have right now? What type of scheme is going to make us thrive? That's what we're going to create. And that, I think, is that's a difference when you're talking about a coach getting a second chance, is if they show that ability to learn and evolve. I think that can separate himself tremendously.
Oh, absolutely. And what can also separate, somebody alluded to earlier, I talked about relationships, but every stop he's went to, you talk about the staff that he had at Atlanta, every stop he's went to, it's like he's picked up a piece or two. He's made a connection with somebody. And as we see, they've all kind of flooded over here. But more than that, it's also when you've been around to different places and you've had success and you're continually learning and reinventing yourself, a lot of people look at that like, I want to play with that guy.
Yes.
I want to come to that organization. And as we've seen, it happened that way. Ladies and gentlemen, back-to-back years, we get a blockbuster offensive coordinator hire. And this year, Washington hires former Arizona Cardinals head coach, former Texas Tech and USC OC, Kliff Kingsbury. He will be our offensive coordinator. And Will, I'm gonna ask you this, but first I want to get Ben's comment in here, who basically said it's not so much Quinn, but it'll be how Kliff does with the offense and the quarterback that he'll work with in December that will determine where the Commanders go for the next 2 years. Do you agree with that comment? And what could Kliff do for us, man?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think without a doubt, Kliff Kingsbury is a big-time hire. And they said if you're a defensive coach, it's going to be the biggest concern is who are you going to bring in on offense. And it seems like they hit a home run on this one. They at least got a very, very big name to come here. And it is going to be on Kliff now, because if we do draft a quarterback, or even if he, I'm just going to say it, when we draft a quarterback, it's going to be on him to develop a franchise guy. We're drafting someone at, number 2. That's a huge deal. But I still think it's going to be Quinn's leadership, and I think it's going to be a little bit more about having to, recognize what did he do well with Kyle Shanahan as his OC, who was another young offensive coordinator with who really had control over the situation, versus what would he do differently. I'll let you chat on it, especially with Scott sending us stuff to throw us off our game, and then come back to me with some thoughts on Kliff and Joe.
Honestly, like I said about the relationship, I love that he was able to bring Kliff over and surface value. I mean, we see the type of guys this guy has worked with. You know what I mean? With the Matt Ryan when he was elite, obviously Caleb, obviously going back to Patrick Mahomes in college, he's had these different type of quarterbacks. And then all of a sudden, you and I talked about it, we can start to envision what is the characteristics of quarterback we might be looking at. And we'll talk about that, later on down the line as far as who we're drafting and things like that. But it brings an excitement to just the whole organization, because the caliber this guy has been with, so he has an eye for it. Now, on top of that, you got Quinn, who's in charge, and for all intents and purposes, I don't know. I mean, we know with Ron Rivera, Ron was the guy, and even though EB was there, Ron was going to put in his 2 cents. Ron still had the control. I wonder how Kliff will be treated in this. Is it, I'm a defensive coach with Dan Quinn, you take care of that offense, you do what you got to do, or will I'm about to say Ron, will Dan Quinn be a micromanager, kind of how Ron was? But I think if Kliff is able to kind of have free reign and get some of the guys that he likes, I think it can be only positive. I mean, right? Like, this is a big move for us.
This is a huge move. And I think he's coming in there with the idea that this is going to be your offense to go with, because it's one of the things. The reason why it's such a huge move is what Nathan's saying. What do we have on the offensive line? Right. Tell me, whenever would we attract a caliber of coach like a Kliff Kingsbury, with his track record of being a head coach, of having a good offense in Arizona, of teaching a rookie quarterback and putting up good numbers and winning 11 games with Kyler Murray, and then being a sought-after assistant at Southern Cal. That's not the guy that comes to Washington. Dan Snyder could only attract those guys in the beginning when he threw a lot of money at them. And then after that, nobody wanted to come to Washington. Why do you think we had to hire Jim Zorn so many years ago? Because nobody wanted the job.
Right.
Where he did. He's like, you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a good offensive line, I'm in. So I think that really shows that the belief and trust he has in Dan Quinn to say, listen, it's going to be my offense that I can come over and figure out. And also knowing that there's resources and an ownership that's going to support. And so it's like they're going to build this team up together. So I think it's a huge deal to get a Kliff Kingsbury. And I'm very excited to see his air raid and what he wants to bring in as an offensive coordinator. Because just remember, he's also having to rehab his image. I'm sure he wants to be a head coach again. Well, this is his chance to show that he can lead an offense, which can give him a chance to lead a team again.
Exactly. And that to me is exciting. You talk about the air raid. Oh man, talk about me in college football when I'm playing air raid all day. Yeah. But yeah, my favorite part about that is one of the things he says, and I think you showed this to me, how he incorporates the run and how he's able to kind of use the run game in that. And for me, that's something that whoever we have at quarterback, we need to establish that. We have to have that run game. Yes, to your point, Nathan, it does start with an O-line. We definitely need that. But at the same time, I want his offense to take over. Obviously, we're going to stretch the field, but let's also create some of those gaps. One of the things I know they were talking about is that the gaps, our Logan Paulson was saying, the gaps on the O-line, spreading the defense out while also, trying to make the best of each of those holes and things like that. I as a running back, hearing somebody that's a air raid, obviously it's like, oh my goodness, Mike Leach, we're just pass, 99% pass. But Kliff seems to enjoy running the ball. We've seen how, the running game he was able to put together in Arizona. And even to Texas Tech, they had a little semblance of a running game back when, with Patrick Mahomes. But I'm very excited about this. Let's flip over to the defense. On a name that might not be as well known, Joe Witt Jr., who was he assisted Dan Quinn when he got Dallas on defense, right?
Yeah, he was with the DBs.
Yeah, and now he will be our defensive coordinator. This is his first defensive coordinator position. I'm excited about that. African American guy, Black History Month. Congrats, my dude. Love that. But talk to me, because outside of the fact that he worked with the cornerbacks, which is absolutely something we need to specialize on. What is it about Joe Witt Jr. that I should even why am I not saying who is this guy? What is it about him that we should be excited about? Sure.
You can be saying who is this guy, but the reason why I think you should believe in this guy is he's been with Dan Quinn at multiple stops. Yeah. So if Dan Quinn, who just came off having a really good defense in the last couple of years and rehabbed his image in Dallas, is willing to turn over the reins of his team now in Washington to Joe Witt Jr., it's got to be someone that he trusts, and he's been with him in Seattle. He was with him in Atlanta. He came with him to Dallas. So this is somebody that Dan Quinn believes in and is willing to turn over the keys and say, I know he knows what my vision, he knows what I want done. He can implement it as well, so I can also focus on other things. So I think that's the big part about it. Leadership is what Nathan's saying. I go with trust, and then I go look at the Dallas Cowboys. Who is Deron Bland?
Yeah.
Trayvon Diggs was not drafted, expected to be the next. Who's that? Darrell Revis. Yeah. He was never drafted to be that guy, and he turned into that guy. Well, there's got to be some good scheme and some good coaching going on there. So that got me excited. Plus, let's not take away from the fact that not only did we take Dallas's defensive coordinator, which was the best part of their team, we took his right-hand man with us too.
Let's go.
So they couldn't just promote that guy either and just have some continuity. Now, Dallas has to come in with a new defensive coordinator and a new scheme. They didn't just get to keep things going. So that's a reason to be excited about this as well.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to Ab. Trust is a very good word, Will. Absolutely. And look, and my theme of the day is going to be relationships, because Dan Quinn brought his guy, Joe Witt Jr., and we already know there was somebody, number 11, that was saying, hey, look, I might just go with my coach. And his Penn State buddy, Jahan Dotson, said, come on, brother. Come on. But with this, and truthfully and honestly, with Joe Witt Jr. coming, we talked about relationships. He came with Dan Quinn. I know we're talking coaches, but what are the chances that a number of these guys from that Dallas defense potentially come? I mean, is it a good chance? Maybe not Micah Parsons, but
Right.
you talked about a number of guys that go with him. I think Dante Fowler Jr. and some of these other dudes. Should we expect them to come? Like,
it would not surprise me if we get a couple Cowboy defensive players. There were rumors in early January that said, that basically said, guys like Jordan Lewis, like Curse is a safety, Dante Fowler. I think they've even got a D lineman that really believe in Dan Quinn. They're DQ guys. I think one of them has even bounced to a couple different teams with Dan Quinn. So it may not surprise me if we sign a couple. Plus, let's think about it. If you're implementing a certain scheme, would you not want to have a couple guys who know it very well to be those on-field coaches? I mean, Ron did that his very first year when he brought in Thomas Davis, who was not fast enough to be a starter anymore, but he was there to help teach, training camp, a little bit on the field, be a locker room leader, that type of stuff. But honestly, we may get a couple Cowboys that come in here to help us out. But honestly, I think you're going to see from the other coaching staff that they got and everything that people are just going to want to come here to be coached by good coaches. So right. Yes, we could get a few, but I don't know. I don't think you're going to see this huge exodus from Dallas to Washington.
Right. And to follow it up, I think Nate asked a great question, but are they going to be impact players for us? And with the exception of if, God forbid, we get, Micah Parsons or Trayvon Diggs or some of that type of caliber, how do we know these guys aren't just random regular guys? And it's great that they follow, but I want to go back to something I was talking to Ab this week. And one of the things matter of fact, I think he was talking to you about, you bring in these guys and we're hoping they're all good and all and that stuff. But I mean, things might be different. The situation might be different. We don't know how they are in our scheme. And let's be honest. Yes, we've got all this new coaching chains and new owners and everything. But I mean, I don't think they've changed how FedEx is or any of those F grades that we got yet.
Sure.
It's coming. So to go from Jerry's world to that is a major drop off on the off the field type stuff. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of other things that might play into it, but it is definitely an exciting thing. I want to shout out Eric. No, we are not saying we like the Cowboys. Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I like their defense. Yeah.
Right.
I like the way their defense played. I'll take a couple of those guys.
But to that point, and this is what one of the things Ab was saying was that when Ron came, what did he do?
Yeah,
he talked about Thomas Davis, the Commanders, right? We know the defense was good for Dallas, but are we going to be the Washington Cowboys? Like, are we going to just be bringing Cowboys guys in? And is that the right move? Like, I know it's football, and they don't care about the jersey, and they don't have that fire and passion like we do, and it's just business. But still, like, he might have got everything he can get out of them when he was in Dallas. Leave that be.
Right. I mean, it's complete hypothetical. I don't think it would hurt to have one or two guys on his team. If you're talking about, Nathan's asking, are they really going to be impactful players? Well, some of them might because we have holes. I mean, we need defensive linemen. We need two starting defensive edge. So Dante Fowler can come and be a starter here. Yep. We need some corners. Or we need to figure out what's going on with our corner so Jordan Lewis could come in here and start. So maybe they can be impactful in that way. And I would not want to have a ton of them. I don't need a huge exodus, that type of stuff. But I would say if it's going to be a similar defense, it really wouldn't hurt to have one or two to help out.
Right. And you, like you said, the familiarity is always a good thing. So, hey, we'll see what Joe Witt Jr. does and Kliff Kingsbury. Obviously, this is a long ways away from Eric Bieniemy and Jack Del Rio. Really quick, and we don't have to spend that much time here. I've talked to you about this before, and I actually had my brother-in-law hit me up about this. He was like, a year ago, EB, he was your guy. You signed him to a 2-year deal, assistant coach. Everybody's saying he's the next up. And then I get a new regime comes, they want their guy, but we kind of just wiped our hands with EB and didn't even really say it. I mean, it kind of came out on social media that we're going a different direction, and it kind of gave me those Kirk Cousins vibes, like how we did him. I know everything is different and different regime and all that, but that move seems eerily similar, Will.
I think it was. So Dan Quinn announced it in the press conference where he said, yes, I've got a lot of respect for him, but I've let him know that he will not be a part of this coaching staff. Yeah, I mean, to me, I don't think you're going to get a Kliff Kingsbury if you've got EB around. What is EB's role going to be? And basically Dan Quinn saying, I want to turn over this to somebody else. Hey, let me say this. He says, I hired Kyle just like I hired Kliff because I went up against their offense and said they're really tough to go up against. You think Dan Quinn felt that same way about EB last year? No. So if he respects Kliff's offenses, that's what he wants to be going after. So I don't know. I think it's basically just, the idea of let me bring in my own guys. They've kept a couple coaches on offense from that staff, from the commander staff from last year. But I think it's more about I want a clean slate, bring in my old guys and let Kliff have a say in some of, who he wants on staff too.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, let's keep going. You mentioned the rest of the coaching staff. You mentioned those two names that we kept. Bobby Ingram, wide receivers coach. Ryan Kerrigan, pass rush specialist.
Let's go offense. Let's stay offense.
Oh, stay offense. Okay.
Yeah.
Who else did we keep offense?
Yeah, so Tavita Pritchard is our quarterbacks coach. And he came, this EB hired him. And he had a couple other teams reach out to him to go, but he decided to stick around Washington. So again, that's that reputation of Dan Quinn, Kliff Kingsbury, what they're building here. Someone said, I want to be a part of this. I want to see what this is like. Yeah, they kept Bobby Ingram. That got a big old clap on social media from Jahan Dotson, which losing EB was Jahan's been pretty vocal on social media. When EB was let go, he did not seem to care one bit. I don't remember what he said, but he made some comments about like, see ya, don't let the door hit you. Yeah. So those are some ones. Some of the other hires, tight ends coach, I don't know what his first name is, but he pronounces his last name Rye. He's the tight ends coach. He worked with Kliff in Arizona, and he's coming over from Tampa Bay. We've got 3 other coaches. 2 of them, I think, are home runs. The one is the one that we can question. So the home run, our running backs coach and run game coordinator is going to be Anthony Lynn, coming over from San Francisco. He interviewed to be our offensive coordinator last year. He was the former head coach of the Chargers. He drafted Justin Herbert. They had some injuries towards the end of the year, and they got hurt, and he ended up getting fired. He was also the run game coach in Buffalo, so a lot of experience. He's been in San Francisco. Love that move. Yeah. We hired Brian Johnson to be a passing game coordinator. This is the offensive coordinator of the Eagles. He got fired after 1 season, but his forte is quarterbacks. Right. That's what he's been known in college. That's what he came to the NFL to be a quarterbacks coach. So I'm excited about that. The one hire that has everyone going, huh? So all these names people are excited about, all these new names, for the most part, people are like, nice. Anthony Lynn, huge hire. Brian Johnson, well-respected in the league, great. Then we hire Bobby Johnson to be our offensive line coach, who came from the Giants for the past 2 years. The Giants have not had a good offensive line.
Right.
And Giants fans, you can't go by fans' reactions. We're like, you hired an offensive line coach, Washington? Thank you. Thank you for taking him off our hands.
God,
so that one's a little bit like, huh. But that's our coaching staff. I'll let you react, and then I got some other things.
Absolutely. Look, first and foremost, number one hire for me is the one you were super excited about, Anthony Lynn. Look, I've liked this guy since he was a coach at the Chargers, and he was unceremoniously let go after only a couple years over there. I've always thought this is a top tier head coach. He's somebody that he's going to improve your staff. He's going to improve your players. He's going to work with your guys. We've seen what he can do at head. Now let's see if he can, work with our running backs. Unfortunately, our old running backs coach, shout out to her. Forgive me, I do not remember her name.
Jennifer King.
Thank you, sir. one of the first woman in our organization to run that position, and thought she did a great job. I understand the reason why she's out, but this hire for me is great. I mean, going along with it with Kliff Kingsbury, the Brian Johnson one, and I to your point, I absolutely know about him being a quarterback guy and everything like that. And I was talking to one of my buddies, the Eagles fan, that was saying, last year, obviously it was great. Up to week 11 this year, everything was great, but there were still things. Yeah, right. There were still little bits and pieces that you can see where it's like you're not blowing these teams out, and then obviously the drop off towards the end of the season. And it's almost like, well, what happened? Now, albeit I'll still take that and what he was able to do for that year and a half stretch than this daggone Giants coordinator, because even our defense looked decent against them. So for me, I'm really excited about those other ones. Another thing that our guy said, Ab, and I want to talk about this. And again, check them out. They will be on. Ab and our guy Alex will be on tomorrow night talking a lot of this stuff. So definitely get up with them. But one of the things he was saying is, you got Kliff Kingsbury, who's been a coach of some sort. You got Quinn, now he's the coach. You got what's his name? Anthony Lynn, head coach. All Chiefs. Do we have too many of them? Do we have too many heads in this? I mean, are they all going to be able to narrow down and follow one specific voice? Like, what do you think?
Well, what's interesting about this is all these guys, and we've got even a few on the defense, they've all been higher, and now they're back to being kind of specialists, which, I mean, Dan Quinn had a huge amount of success in Dallas with it. Kingsbury, this is his first time in the NFL being an offensive coordinator. I mean, he went from college to NFL as a head coach. So he's taken a step down. I mean, Anthony Lynn has kind of been that lower role in San Francisco. And that's Kyle Shanahan's show. And Brian Johnson's going from an OC to a pass game coordinator. So there's going to be a hierarchy that these guys are going to have to follow. So it's going to be interesting, to kind of that's a dynamic that we got to watch. You know what I love though about this? The word is succession. Okay. One of the concerns about hiring a defensive head coach was, but if you draft a quarterback and then you do well, that OC leaves, what's the offense going to be? Well, let's say Kingsbury has success and gets a job as a head coach. First and foremost, you know what that means? That means we won. Okay. Yeah. So let me first say I'll take that part, because when do we ever have that situation? That's right. Not since Sean McVay, when we had a good offense and we were competitive. Did we lose an offensive coordinator? Okay. So let me be in that situation for one. Let me go there first. Second off, you've got guys in place who could step up if needed. You've got an Anthony Lynn that if you need to, if he could become your offensive coordinator. You've got two young guys who are being groomed in a Brian Johnson and a Tavita Pritchard that are now getting an opportunity to learn under an Anthony Lynn, to learn under a Kliff Kingsbury. So if that happens, we've got some guys in place to keep the thing moving. And that's what I love about this. It's not just a hodgepodge of guys. It's stuff like there's a plan behind this from what I see.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something that I think, everybody really strives for. You look at the Belichick tree, you look at the Andy Reid tree, Nick Saban, all these guys have all these coaches that have been able to, either go elsewhere. Obviously, all we're known for is LaFleur and Shanahan and all these coaches that were terrible with us, with all the crap talent and everything. We went 3-13, but then obviously had success elsewhere. I would love that. I want that. You talk about succession. That'd be great, where you have these guys that are able to move up. They know what this guy's been doing, so we don't have a situation where when the next guy comes in, it's like, okay, let's start from scratch. No, we're just picking up where we left off. You know what I mean? As opposed to when we had Scott Turner ran a certain way, then we get EB, he does it completely different. And actually it is on par, if not worse, than what Scott Turner did, in some regard. So that's what I love. I love that you hit that. You mentioned that, and I think you hit on it, is that we're just next man up. When we talk about next man up, that you can't have that if this guy is far greater than this guy. because this guy once he gets his role, what we saw with EB is that sometimes if you're not the guy, I don't care what play you drew up or what play you called, it ain't it, because there's something else in there. And we saw that again this weekend with Andy Reid.
Yep.
So, oh man. Yeah, buddy. So, hey, that's the offense. Let's flip it over to the defense. We said defensive coordinator now is Joe Witt Jr. Let's go down the list. Our passing game coordinator and DB's guy is Jason Williams.
Simmons.
Simmons.
Jason Simmons.
Yeah, Jason Simmons. Thank you. Our D-line coach, Daryl Tack. Our assistant.
Daryl Tapp, the guy from Virginia Tech. You watched him in college. He played for the Redskins. Number 55.
Hate Virginia Tech.
Well, you watched him, doggone it. He was good.
I'm sure I did, and I probably disliked him. Hate Virginia Tech. What's a hokey? Come on now. Assistant D-line coach, Sheriff Floyd. This move, linebackers coach, Ken Norton Jr. I am floored about this one. I have hated this man when he was on Dallas and doing all his little, after he's, sacking us or picking us off or something like that. I've seen him around the league and always said, when he's against you, God, this guy's good. You wish he's on your team. And now to have an opportunity to get him at what position, Will?
Linebacker.
Yeah.
What's that? What is that? What position
What is that? We haven't had that in a while. Oh, but I'm so excited about this. And then bringing in Kerrigan, like I said, and then John Pagano, senior defensive assistant. Will, we talked about the names on offense, but dear God, these names on defense, woo, I like that, man. What you think?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I mean, I was so excited to hear about Ken Norton Jr. for two reasons. One, you said it. We're putting an emphasis on linebackers. Holy smokes. That's fantastic for one. And then second off, you're bringing in a guy who's been a two-time defensive coordinator who for some reason hasn't been a head coach, but he was on that track in Seattle. We're like, oh, this is the next Seattle defensive coordinator to be a head coach. And John Pagano, he's that famous family. His brother Chuck was the head coach of the Colts. He came from the Ravens. They're a very smart football family. So you bring in that type of talent, that only helps some of these younger coaches that we've got. A Daryl Tapp, a Sharif Floyd, even a Jason Simmons, even a Ryan Kerrigan, who is a very young coach, getting a chance to really learn from some veterans, from real guys who've got a lot of talent and can help him out. And I love what they did with Kerrigan. They named him an assistant linebacker. He was never a linebacker for us, but his focus is he's the pass rush specialist. That's what Kerrigan did with us, in Washington. So it's putting him in a good position too to apply. What does he know? I love this. There's a ton of experience. Yes. And I sit here and go, my gosh, man, how much is Josh Harris paying in coaching salaries here? I mean, you've got DQ, you've got Kliff, you've got Joe Witt as your defense coordinator, you've got, Anthony Lynn, who's been places, you've got Norton, you've got Pagano. Like, how much are you paying these guys? My gosh.
Let's go. That's my favorite order, man. Somebody has got the pen in hand, just like, you just let me know how many zeros.
Yeah, all right? What do you want? Here you go.
I got it.
He wasn't lying when he said we're going to put together, quality staff.
Yes, and I love it. He needs to put somebody together to help his face in press conferences, because some of those look.
He's just like bored at times.
It's like, please take the camera off this man.
Yeah, for real.
I was like, dude, this is supposed to. You got Dan Quinn and Adam Peters right next to you.
It's 1 hour. All we're asking for is 1 hour to look engaged. Right. It's not hard.
At one point, he's like, almost like, what am I doing here? Like, what, exactly. Can I go now?
Right.
Come on, buddy. Oh my goodness. But yeah, to your point, Will, when you start to look at these names, and you mentioned it, you hit on the head, experience, but also. This is huge. This is why you keep a guy like a Kerrigan or Ingram. You have guys that have been here. They kind of know Washington. Hey, Kerrigan was a Redskin. We already know where he is on our sack list, and how we wanted to kind of keep him around just because he's one of those originals, one of the guys that one of the last true Redskins that we can really get excited about. And to have him in-house, I think we do need, because we're coming up with a new image. We're doing a new thing, but we need what you and I have been talking about, and that's some semblance of the past. You know what I mean? We were great. Those teams were great. And I love that, speaking of our owner, he was a guy that's a local guy. Now, so was Dan. We know about that. Yeah. But when I hear that from our owner now, I honestly feel kind of like it's one of those things, like he even said in one of his press conferences with Chick Hernandez. He said, "This is a dream come true." He said, "I pinch myself every day, but then I'm like, okay, good, you gotta get back to work." I love that, because it's half of the excitement, as if you and I would have, taken over the team. But then there's also the other half that says there's things that need to be done, and it needs to be done right now. And I know what it took to get this team. Now we need to start creating stuff. And by this roster of coaches that we've gotten thus far, and special teams coordinator is Larry Izzo.
Oh, yeah. Totally forgot that.
Yeah. So, but this list of coaches and the guys that we've got, come on, man. Come on. And,
right. Well, I don't want to just gloss over Larry Izzo. Remember, this guy he was known as a special team. He's a special teams Pro Bowler. He's been in Seattle for 3 years with the top 10 special teams unit, and Mike McDonald just let him go. It's like, this was a big time hire there too. It's awesome.
Man, this is excitement. And that Jets coach. Yeah. No, this is excitement, man. Bringing these guys in here. But now, again, I'm going to go back to the question I asked before. We talked about it in our group chat. Is this going to be too many Chiefs? Not enough, for lack of a better term, Indians. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of guys. It fit, but it's still. I'm sorry.
I was saying not enough Redskins. That's not.
Yeah, Redskins.
Don't want to say it that way.
But still, you have a guy that's now becoming his first time at this position, Joe Witt Jr. Yeah. And then you got a couple other guys that have been here now. None of these guys have been coaches, but they've been around coach. You talk about Pagano, Kerrigan with us, Ken Norton Jr. has been around some quality. So it kind of it makes you wonder, maybe. It's not as the names aren't as glamorous maybe as the offensive side of the ball, but still you got a guy leading that maybe has not done that before. And then you got some guys that have maybe been in positions where they've been kind of equal to him. Is it going to play an effect? Is it going to have an effect on defense?
I'm going to go glass half full, the way I usually am, whereas these guys know what they're signing up for. They know what they're getting into, and most importantly, they chose to come here. Kliff Kingsbury could have been in Las Vegas, and he chose to come here. John Pagano had several different teams reaching out to him. He chose to come to D.C. to play this role with our defense. So I think they understand what they're getting into, and I think these guys want to be a part of it. It's not Washington was throwing a bag at me, so I went ahead and took it. It's we got guys who've done this before. We don't have Brett Wieselmeyer, who was a high school coach, now coaching a first-round cornerback how to play in the NFL, and it was an epic flop. You've got quality folks who know what they're talking about, and that's going to be huge.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go ahead and move on, because with all these coaches here, we have to also ask the questions, who are they going to be coaching? Now, there are a number of players on our squad right now, but we don't know who's going to stay, who's going to go. Free agency is coming up in a couple weeks. Obviously, the draft is in April. Let's go ahead and ask that question. What players will benefit most from these coaching hires? I want to start, and it goes back to the message on the Twitter thing that Jahan Dotson put out after EB, was in, cut, and you bring in Kliff. Him and Brian Robinson I think Brian Robinson just put two flames, man, and Jahan was super hyped. These are running back room, like I told you about how the air raid, how he's going to use the running game. That's going to get a major improvement. And our wide receivers. One of the things that I thought we had an issue with last year is that I don't think there was any rhyme or reason to kind of who we went to. It was like, we'll throw it to all these different people. We didn't we didn't focus on our clear-cut number one on our team, Terry McLaurin, which we can't seem to do. So that's something I want Kliff to do. But also, Jahan, yeah, he had a bad year, but we didn't force feed these guys. Curtis Samuels did enough of what he could, but we didn't get our wide receivers and our running backs, our specialists, obviously also our quarterback. I think they are going to benefit the most from these coaching hires, because I feel like with all these different coaches, now we're starting to go in a direction, right? And they're all, there's one voice that they're listening to. We're all going in this direction. And I think if he wants to keep these guys, I think you got 3 or 4 guys right now with Robinson, keeping maybe Chris Rodriguez for the short yardage, and then Jahan, Terry. I don't know if we're going to re-sign Curtis or whatever. And I'm not even mentioning the North Carolina guy. Yeah, I'm not doing it. Not this year. You have to earn it this year. But I honestly think our specialists on offense will definitely benefit a great deal from this once he gets going. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think you're right, because the Jahan Dotson had a sophomore slump, and it was clear that there was eventually became a disconnect between the coaches and him. And I don't think it was wide receiver. He was very happy to have Ingram stick around. And so I don't think it was a wide receiver coach issue, so he had such a promising rookie season that I think he could only, improve. And I mean, I think Nathan said it, he's next. He shouldn't be chirping. Well, this will be his chance to really prove, last year was an aberration because of, lack of a connection. Mm-hmm. The guy that I think is going to benefit the most from this, or has the chance to benefit the most, is Jamin Davis. He's finally going to be coached by folks who value linebackers. Yeah. And he's going to be coached by someone like Dan Quinn, who found a way to take an athletic player and say, let me use your strengths. What a concept. He finally is going to be coached by someone like Ken Norton Jr., who said, hey, guess what? I'm in the Hall of Fame. I think he's in the Hall of Fame. Or he was an all-pro linebacker. Yeah. Let me show you how the game's played. Let me show you what you need to do. So for someone who's been a disappointment in his career, I also think you got to admit that he played a position that was not valued by the previous staff. And you have to wonder what type of coaching was he being given. So I hope Jamin reaches his potential by all means. I always root for our guys, and I hope this really helps him out. And I hope he's a very athletic player. Let's utilize that athleticism.
Yes. And you know what? And that's something that I'm looking forward to as well as the linebackers, because now in Ken Norton Jr., you have a guy that was, like you said, an all-pro linebacker. I mean, this guy was a playmaker on defense, on those Dallas defenses, man. One of the key cogs on
and that. 49ers, don't forget. He went to San Francisco. That's right.
He won a championship in San Fran, right? Yeah. And that 94 year, that's right. So he helped turn that defense around as well. And I think for me, that's going to be something that we're gonna be able to focus on, because of the fact that Norton and look, Norton is older than Jamin Davis, obviously by some years, but he ain't as old as Jack Del Rio. You know what I mean? Norton can get out there and show you, hey, look, let me show you how this is done, as opposed to Del Rio saying, do it this way. Yeah. But he can't really get out there physically, or we don't know, but we just assume so. But that is huge for me. And then obviously Joe Witt Jr., seeing what he did with Deron Bland, seeing what he did with Trayvon and Quinn and what they did with those guys, our cornerbacks, man, and our secondary. Cam Curl, man. I mean, out of all of the crap that we've dealt with, to have him be as good as he's been on our defense when healthy, I can only imagine what's going to happen when he gets to play a position and not 1, 2, 3, my safety, my nickel corner, or my Buffalo. You know what I mean? Like, that I love. And then you mentioned it, Forbes, I mean, he's getting ragged on. I've seen memes about him as, biggest flop, bust, blah, blah, blah. But like you said, it was a high school guy coaching this guy that hadn't been. I could have done better than that. And I would have just said backpedal, turn around and run. That would have been better. So this to me these are 2 key positions that we absolutely need, and we absolutely have not had at least at a high level. Well, we haven't had a linebacker in years, but at a high level at secondary since Smoot. Like, how far do we have to go back to we had
Sean Springs?
Yeah, Springs.
He played well for us, but you're right. Darryl Green,
right?
Champ Bailey,
right? We got to go all the way back to that, and for me, that's what I'm excited about. I want to see these guys start to elevate our defense with the secondary and the linebackers. Our D-line, I mean, we don't know. We're going to keep those two middle guys, but I feel like we could be fine with them. If we could shut down that back seven, if we could shut down those wide receivers coming out and not get killed by the cross or have these gaping holes by the running game, that to me is something that's paramount and something that we have not had and we need desperately.
Right. Well, you talked about it with our secondary. We don't know who they're going to want to bring in free agency. And one of the reasons I welcomed a guy like a Jordan Lewis from Dallas is because Forbes and St. Juice are unproven as starters. And Kendall Fuller's a free agent. So we don't know who's going to be there. Right. Those guys have to get better than what they've shown. And so, maybe there's a chance with this new coaching staff, they can improve their technique. One thing I was listening to about Dan Quinn that had me a little bit concerned was in Dallas, he played a lot of man coverage. And I was like, that doesn't help Emmanuel Forbes. But the difference being he had his corners play off because they basically said our defensive line, we're going to put enough pressure where they're going to have to get rid of the ball early, and he allows his corners to jump routes. That is exactly what Forbes did at Mississippi State. He anticipated plays. And so I was like, okay, well maybe that would work. Because if you're just saying you need to be a man corner, well, then just cut him now. Like, let's just move on.
Just we're done.
Yeah. But and it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do because Cam Curl's a free agent. Because I'm with you. We're like, let him play a position, but we got to figure out is he someone they want to bring back? We don't really know that yet. So there's a lot of question marks in this defense. That's probably our bigger question mark. Like we know the offensive line sucked last year, but the whole defense sucked last year. Terrible. And we don't have two starting edges right now. So there's a lot of holes in that secondary. So the fact that we've got so much experience as we do, that helps me out. Maybe the coaches can cover up for not having the Jimmies and the Joes with some better X's and O's.
All I know is that until we get better, Ken Norton better fit himself for an outfit.
Yeah,
right? We might need to bring him out there. All right,
I'm pretty sure Jason Simmons played it, and he's pretty young. Maybe he can still go.
I'm saying, look, hopefully that's why we brought some of these guys in. Oh, man. But I think you had a great point that, we really don't know. Like, yes, we know kind of maybe the identity that we're going in. We know kind of the tendencies of some of the guys that we have in-house. Speaking of Kliff Kingsbury, the defense, Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., things like that. But we still don't know of the roster that we have right now who will still be on the team. We don't know who's getting the pink slip, who's getting cut. It might be guys that we liked. It might be guys that we didn't. And it might just be for monetary value. Who can we cut to save some money on cap, to help bring somebody else in. So, it's going to be interesting to see who we bring in. But another thing that we have to know, that we have to ask, I don't want to ask this, but everybody keeps putting this in here. Apparently, we have the number 2 pick, and we're looking to maybe go higher. I don't know about that. We'll see. But look, there are rumors that we might go after that first overall pick. Chicago Bears have it at 1. We're at 2. There's another question surrounding Chicago Bears that we'll ask a little bit later. But as far as this, is this a rumor? Tell me this is a rumor, Will.
Bring him home, Sean. Bring him home. No, I'm just messing with you. Listen, we just went over how many holes we have on defense, and we also have to revamp the offensive line. Oh, and we need a starting quarterback. I don't want to give up the capital that it's going to take to go from 2 to 1. I'm hearing it would be at least a first-round pick next year, if not more. What if it's 2? I don't want us to get in the same situation that Carolina did. I mean, there's a chance. There's no guarantee that these guys want to turn this around in one off season. And so we could be picking top 10 next year again. I don't want to be given a top 10 pick to the Bears because we went up to go get Caleb Williams, if we still have some growing pains with this. So right now I'm at the point with these three quarterbacks where today, February 14th, I'm okay with any of them. All three of them I'm okay with. So I don't feel the need to go up. Now, let's be honest. History shows itself that when you have multiple quarterbacks, they're not all going to hit. For every Andrew Luck, you're going to have an RG3. For every Peyton Manning, you're going to have a Ryan Leaf. For what did we have the couple years ago? For every Trevor Lawrence, you're going to have a Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and a Mac Jones and a Justin Fields, maybe. So they're not a sure thing that all three of them are going to be good, and I get that. So you can't just say, well, we'll just pick one of these three and we'll roll with it. But for now, early on, before all the scouting has happened right now, I'm fine with any of the three, I think, being our quarterback. So I say let's just stay at 2 and get the guy that we think is the next best.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's kind of crazy to even think about these rumors coming out because, like you said, the fact that we're at 2 says something. That's one thing. We had a crappy season, but still we're this high up. But then to move up, like you said, the amount it would take to get there, and for what? You know what I mean? That means we must be 100% sold on Caleb, I'm assuming, or Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think that, but it means we are 100% sold on one of these guys, and then it makes you think, is he the answer? You know what I mean? And I guess I can ask the question, is he the answer if I'm getting him at 2 without having to give anything up, as opposed to if I'm giving all of this up at 1 and that to get to 1 to get him to, okay, here we go again, like you were talking about. And it does go back to the RG3 thing where you give up all that stuff to the Rams and then what happens? Nothing. We get 1 year of it, and technically it was half of a year because we went 3-6 in the beginning of that year. Yeah. We get 1 year of this guy and then nothing. And we were struggling for the next how many years? And thankfully, because our team had the foresight or maybe the sabotage to try to get Kirk Cousins, since we tried to sabotage ourselves. But that's why we weren't in too much of a hole, albeit it wasn't pretty all that time. So no, I don't want to go up for number 1. And I think that's ridiculous. Again, we don't know who's going to be here. We don't know the type of guys we're going to get in free agency, if we're going to look for quarterback free agency or going to the draft. But you talked about it. I've talked about it. I know Ab has. If anything, if we do make any move, for me, it would be to go back. And the only reason I would want to go back is so we could potentially, get a couple of extra picks. But I want to solidify that line. And there's a quarterback that was in the other Carolina that's piquing my interest right about now. He's got a nice first name. It should be a last name, but it's all good. And he's not rattled. He's not rattled. So, well, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we can pull back and maybe get him. Maybe he can sit for a year behind the great one.
I'm guessing are you talking about Spencer or are you talking about Drake? I can't tell now.
No, Spencer. I can get Drake at 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We'll see about him. Yeah, I will say this one thing. I would say the glass half full thought process. If we go and trade up to number 1, that means they have identified the guy that they think is head and shoulders the best one. So if you're going to think of it that way, they have identified that, no, this is the guy we need for our franchise. And so that would be the way that to spin it, to be encouraged by it. But I would hope that we don't draft Spencer Rattler. I'm just going to tell you that. I'm going to hope that.
Ab said we can keep our picks and sign a QB in free agency, and that is a better chance to turn things around faster.
That's going to segue.
Yeah. And let's go ahead and do that because there are a number of quarterbacks that are potentially coming out as free agents, but there's one guy that he's just familiar to Washington. I don't know. He just makes you want to say, you like that? Thoughts, Kirk Cousins, and the odds of coming back to the Commanders. Right now, the last I checked, we were the top odds to get the guy. He's a free agent this year. Obviously, we know about the Achilles injury that didn't stop him from dancing at the NFL Awards. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh yeah, dude's got moves.
Yeah. He's got moves and a voice too.
Oh.
Was he an NSYNC? I don't know. Maybe. But look, Kirk. Hey, when he was with us, we talked about this over the 20 some odd quarterbacks we've had in the last 10, 15 years. He has clearly been the most consistent. I mean, number 4,000 yard seasons, another great seasons for us. We know the downfalls or whatever, but at the same time, we're talking about getting this thing up and rolling and potentially bringing in veterans. I'm going to be very honest with you. I would not be opposed to this. I wouldn't. Kirk is stable. We know what he's going to give to us. And if he actually has a good offensive coordinator and a good coach, somebody that's going to build a line for him, we could do worse.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, Kirk is not a bad quarterback.
Nope.
He is not a bad quarterback. And I mean, I don't know what it's going to take to get him, but I mean, we then don't have to use that number 2 pick, that we can then pick up a lineman, somebody that can protect him. And then all of a sudden, now we got a guy that can just sit in the pocket and dart these guys all the way up and down the field. Will, what are your thoughts about it? Do you like that?
I see what you did there. I can see the advantages to it. I certainly can. Because just like you said, it would allow us to use that number 2 overall pick to leverage for a trade down. It would allow us to go after a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Joe Alt or a Fashanu, or all the above if you trade down, or Brock Bowers, to provide a big time weapon. So
Wait, you say Brock Bowers?
I did.
Did you say first round, Brock Bowers?
Of course, first round.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm just
he's
saying,
going to be a top 10 pick.
Last year, I was trying to get Michael Mayer in the first round, and I got shut down. That's all I'm saying.
Because I'm not talking about Michael Mayer. We're talking about Brock Bowers here. Big difference.
Keep going, man.
From a roster construction and turning this thing around quickly, Kirk would be the fastest way to get to respectability. Absolutely. I'm not completely sold that this franchise wants to turn it around that fast. Adam Peters has kind of mentioned the fact that he believes in the core of building through the draft and using free agency to supplement that. And San Francisco made like key signings at times. Like they did put out money for Javon Hargrave, one of those two. So they're not opposed to spending money, but they built their team through the draft. And I think he's going to do the same thing. And so I'm not saying these guys are trying to completely flip the script in year one, that they may recognize it's going to take a little bit more. But I also say from the standpoint of it's the cap space. That's part of the problem is, Kirk, he's not going to be a $50, $60 million a year like Dak is going to be. But I'm hearing he very well could be $40 million a year. Mm-hmm. Now I did hear you could spread that out, so he could be around 25 a year, which ironically is the same amount that they wanted to offer him when he was here, 6-8 years ago, and he said no, I can do better than that, right? Wouldn't that be funny? Makes 25 a year. But I would say we need to allocate those resources elsewhere. And so, he is the best free agent. He's the safest. Like this is a good pickup. You can draft someone in the second round, maybe a Bo Nix, something like that to groom, someone, JJ McCarthy, something like that. But it's going to cost more than I think we need to spend. So I wouldn't love the idea, but that would also say to me, they're going after this. They want to improve this team quickly. So that would be exciting.
Yeah, and then this is my concern, like you were just saying. What are we offering him? How much it would be? I mean, but if they put all that into him, that'd be fine. Like I wouldn't have an issue. But my big red flag is, and we don't know what's going to happen. Just like Aaron Rodgers, he's coming off the Achilles injury. We don't know how he's gonna recoup and revamp and what type of QB he was. Now, albeit this guy wasn't a mobile guy.
He didn't have much of a giddy up before.
Right. But seeing him dance, he does have a couple steps. So I mean, I honestly, I want to know how back to 100% will he get in his play? Does that does bother me, because if we definitely need to get an O-line to make sure that he doesn't get his jersey doesn't get dirty at all. You know what I mean? But again, it's like, what? How much you putting into this? Ab said, this is my area to talk about. Depends on how long we sign him, but first year cap hit would most likely be relatively low, so it should not be an issue. And again, if we make that move, I mean, it'd be good. But to your point, and this was my whole situation with Sam last year. It was the team that I want is kind of what Gibbs had. We talked about with Charlie Casserly and those guys, and they put Bobby Beathard, and they put those teams together. You build up. You might pick a couple guys here and there, free agents or something like that, but you're building up through the draft. You're getting these guys in. And, I mean, to your point, you said what Peters did in San Francisco. How many years did they get the number one pick? And that D-line is what we thought our D-line was going to be. With Bosa and them boys, that's what our D-line was supposed to be, getting through the draft. So, I would love to have a quick turnaround and everything, but I don't want a quick turnaround just so we can have 1 year of success a couple years down the line and just return to this crap. You know what I mean? So Give me that. If it's slow and steady, let's build each year. 1 year we'd focus on that line 100%, then focus on the D, get those trenches right, get these pieces of the puzzle. And if that means, we're going to have a sacrifice and we're going to be top 10 for maybe next year, well, that's fine, because at the end of the day, what are we fighting? What are we shooting for? Are we shooting to be like the Cowboys and get to the playoffs every year and then answer the question, why can't we get any farther? Or do we want to be the daggone Chiefs and really start building something for the future? You know what I mean? Like, it's not easy, but the Chiefs, the Patriots, the 49ers, albeit they can't seem to get over the hump, they're there every year. That's what I want. Consistently in that hunt, consistently about to go over the top, get to the championship. And I think that's going to need us to take some time. Unfortunately, Washington fans are a very impatient bunch. So I don't know how much time they're going to give. But honestly, if it means bringing back the glory days and bringing back consistent, sustained success, I'm with that. With that.
I was going to say, Sean, I want to be like Dallas. I want to be in the playoffs year in and year out and get bounced. But I also want to be like the Chiefs and win. And I want to be like the Green Bay Packers and be a respectable organization where people are like, oh man, what if they get hot? Right. They might, I'm okay with losing in the playoffs every year right now based on what we've had. I'm with Ab right here.
Which is fine. Y'all can have, but I
totally.
To me, what Dallas has is fool's gold. And if we're gonna chase after that, then what do we really care about winning it all? Like, do we really care about building up something? Yes. You know what I mean? Like, if
I see what you're saying.
The Dallases and the Bills and those type of teams, albeit they can't get past the best teams in the conference, but still, why is it that San Francisco can go to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, with Jimmy G, all these quarterbacks that people are like, still got to question how good they are because they built everything around them. That's what I want to do. And however long that takes, we're in a position where we can do that. I just think that's the move to make instead of let's win next year just so everybody can be like, yeah, we're a winner.
Well, and I think Josh Harris agrees with you because I can't remember if it was either at the press conference. I think it's at the press conference he gave when they fired Ron Rivera. He basically said, we're going to build this up right. He goes, I know we can be a 500 team next year if we want to, but is that the type of sustained success that we want? And so because of that, I don't think us trading up to number one, I don't think signing Kirk Cousins is the route that they're going to go. I think they would much rather do the pick number 2, or as you said, potentially trade down, anticipate stuff like that to build through the draft. Yeah. But we have our next question, our next scenario.
We do. And speaking of, we talked about those, the Bears. We talked about that number 1 pick. And we talked about needing a quarterback. This fits all 3 of those categories. Would you or would you not trade for Justin Fields? I've answered this, so I'm going to let you go.
Yeah. So I loved what Alex said, and I really loved what Ab created when he did his trade for Justin Fields, trade down scenarios from a couple weeks ago on the show, because it sets up the franchise, very, very well. And I was in the wait and see on this because I didn't know who's going to be the offensive coordinator, I didn't know who's going to be the head coach. If we have Ben Johnson as our head coach, I don't want Justin Fields. He's gone against him for the past couple of years, and he's seen the other side, and that's not who he's won with Jared Goff. It's a different quarterback, so I wouldn't be in on that. Now we have Kliff Kingsbury. He's won with a quarterback that is mobile, athletic. He's done it before. So if he says, "Yeah, I can work with that," that changes things for me.
Right.
I'm not in love with the idea, but that changes things for me now. So if Kliff comes in and says, "Yeah, I can rock with Justin. We liked him, and coming out of the draft, and I can make this work, and we're giving up a second-round pick and keeping that number 2 overall." That is a heck of a way to build the roster. So that way you can grab him, Marvin Harrison Jr., or you trade back and get Joe Alt plus another pick. Maybe you get that second rounder back. That would be very intriguing. Now, I will say this. I'm very skeptical about, was the Bears' success at the end of the season Justin Fields or Eberflus in the defense getting it together? And I've heard it's a lot more of not Justin's, help there. But I would say I am much more open to the idea now that we have Kliff Kingsbury, who's done it before with the Kyler Murray.
Right. And that and to Ab and Alex's point, that's one of the things that they kind of swayed me on as far as the type of quarterback that Kliff Kingsbury has had success with is similar to the Justin Fields type. And I love that. My issue with this whole thing, is what are we offering? Because if it's a second or third, something like that, okay, I can deal with it. Definitely not a first. But my issue with Justin is that Justin's been in there, 3 years in Chicago? Obviously different turnover of coaches, OC, things of that nature. And we've seen these little bright lights and, excitement, like, oh, here, look what he did there. Oh, look at that pass he did. But consistently, it's been a struggle. Now, he hasn't had anything else around him up until this year, getting DJ Moore, and then now obviously getting the defensive player, Montez Sweat. But I just wonder, because obviously we knew there were some things that Sam picked up later in the year that kind of affected him because he felt the pressure. He knew he didn't have that much time. He's just trying to get it out. He's thinking too much, all that type of stuff. My question would be, how do we not know that there are these traits that Justin might have picked up, negative traits from losing from that, where it's kind of like, oh, snap, man, he just can't shake that. Now, obviously, we hope a coach and OC will be able to fix that in him, and that's all great if they're able to do that. But I just think when we talk about Sam and how he struggled and if Justin, who has 3 more years of that struggle, has he picked up bad traits along the way? And is that something where we hope that he's going to be great with us, but he still has something, and he still has things that he has to work out in himself?
Right. My thing is you rate Justin just like you put him in as a rookie in this class. Yeah. If you don't think he is better than any of those other guys you could get at number 2, the goal is to get the best quarterback to build your franchise around. And so if a Jaden Daniels or Drake May is better than Justin Fields, then you don't trade for Justin Fields. Right. You go and get the guy that you think is the best person to lead the franchise. So that's kind of my bottom line.
Yeah. Ab said, also, most importantly, trading for Fields puts the power of the draft to us. Yeah. You know what? Another thing, and I think we have to go back to what Nathan said, is that, what are you offering him? Because what is it going to take to get Justin? And this is one of the things I talked to Alex about, is that, he did start having some success later in the year, and he did kind of seem like he was getting it, and they were winning some games. So that moves his value up. So if they're even, first and foremost, we all have this thought that they want Caleb and they're getting rid of Justin. Obviously what he said at the last press conference and thanking the fans and everything. But how do we know that they're ready to move on? Obviously they kept Eberflus. Like, how do we know that they want to push him out of the thing? And if they do, what are they going to, they have the leverage. So what are they going to be saying to us? Like, okay, well, we want X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? So right. it kind of, it's one of those situations where it's kind of like, if we don't have to give this stuff up, then why do you? You right. get like, I mean, it could have, and yes, if this was the best move, I guess, okay, cool. But I kind of feel like, and again, at the end of the day, it goes to what you're saying. If you feel Justin is better than any of these three quarterbacks that we can essentially get for free, then yeah, go with Justin. Mm-hmm. But again, you got to look at the ceiling and what's the floor. You know what I mean? And what's going to be the ceiling for these guys? I personally think Drake May, but in my opinion, Drake May still needs a year. You know what I mean? Caleb, I still think needs a year to get it up here. And I know you were thinking I was joking about Spencer, but I hate to give your boys a compliment. But I've been reading Beamer, man, and I'm not saying he's going to be a starter. I'm not saying first rounder. I'm saying down the line. But he could be somebody that if we have the right heads in-house as offensive coordinator, he could be somebody that the way he's turned around and things he's had to deal with last year and how he did not complain and how he still made the best of it, he could be something that might be deemed a project, but you start looking towards the future. Like, if we get Justin and he doesn't work out, now we have somebody down the line that has a similar kind of ability. He can move. He's got an arm, this and that. And, you're not going to have to give him this perfect thing. You can give him something and he'll work with it and he'll work with you. So you would know that better than I would. But again, I'm not for trading up, or honestly, the Bears, in my opinion, have all the leverage. So they're going to be asking for something. And is it worth giving that something up for Justin Fields?
Exactly. That's the big question mark. Yeah. No, I'm hearing some good things about Spencer, and I think maybe at the combine he'll go up a little bit, but I think he would be great at a team like Minnesota, maybe Tampa Bay, if he has a chance to learn for it, like Jordan Love, literally 2-3 years, then maybe. Right now I'd say his ceiling is to be a good NFL backup, someone who can come in and rally you and win some games. But I think he needs to sit and learn a little bit, because otherwise I think he'd be higher up in the conversation. You know me. I don't think any fourth round pick is going to make it as a starter. I don't believe it. Otherwise, I think the hype would be there. So I don't believe anyone drafted out of the top 35 picks is going to make it.
Except Sammy boy. Oh, out of the top 35. Oh, after the top 35.
Yeah, after that, I'm like, no, you're a backup. How many? Everyone is a flop so many times.
Yeah, it's true. You
got a Dak Prescott. And then you got a Tom Brady, you got a Russell Wilson. Okay. For everyone, you got a Drew Lock, you got a Matt Corral, you got a, you got to, go through the list of the folks who were hot names that failed.
Yep. He said, I think they gave a leverage up when they said it'll take a haul for us to trade. Only leverage they have is when multiple teams buy for Fields. We'll see. I don't necessarily agree with that, because if they think that we're looking for him and they think that's what we want, then they can do whatever they want to do. They can sit here and say, "Oh, well, you have to give us what we're asking for." And so that's where I'm kind of like, at the end of the day, is that worth it? Is that what we want to do? I think Justin would be great if we would have drafted him. Yes, I was there in Chicago when Nick and Delilah and they saw, and they were ecstatic to get this guy. So yes, I absolutely love this guy. But I just think we're in a position where we don't have to give anything up. We can easily pick. We have our pick of the litter, and I just think 2 years, and then technically last year was a rookie, but 2 years we've got a free agent quarterback, and it doesn't work. I know we got a whole different staff now, and I guess that's going to change everything immediately. But that's why I'm looking at Justin like, If we did, that's where the Spencer Rattler thing would work for me, because then it is 2 or 3 years down the line. Then we're like, all right, Justin. Right. The other side to the Justin thing, this is his 4th year coming up, if I'm not mistaken. So if we do get him and he stays 4th and 5th, then we got to pay that 5th-year option, right? Which is, I believe, $23 million.
That is what is reducing the price tag. That is why the Bears aren't going to most likely going to get a first-round pick for Justin Fields, is because there's a ton of money behind it, especially for someone like Washington. They can say, well, if we can draft someone at 2 and pay him a rookie contract, why am I going to pay someone at 1? First and foremost, when you trade for him, you have to decide if you're going to pick up his 5th-year option. His 5th-year option will increase his value a ton as to what you own. So the 4th year, which would be your first year with him, he wouldn't be very expensive at all. It's the 5th year, but you have to say, I'm committing to this guy for 2 years. And if right now, he's not worth a 5th-year contract based on what he has put on film, what he has put out there. But you're having to put faith and say, I'll be willing to pay this guy. Just like Chase Young, where we said, I'm not willing to give you top money when you haven't showed it to me. So that's exactly where there's value in going after a Justin Fields, is because you don't have to give a first-round pickup for him. And so that's where the real value is. You're taking a gamble is what it is.
Oh, yeah. Right. And at the end of the day, and we all know it, it's all about what these coaches want to do, what Dan Quinn wants to do. Like to your point, if Kliff Kingbury says, yeah, I can work with this guy, then there'll be more, chance for us to get him. But at the same time, you got a situation right now that you don't want to have in the near future, where you're at the number 2 pick. You have your pick of one of the top 3 potential quarterbacks coming out of the draft, 2 of which are looked at as, potential top-tier talents. Some have said generational talents. My issues with Caleb, and I still think Drake needs a year more. So, you're taking a chance any which way you look. I'm glad we have this situation, though. I'm glad we can be here with all these new coaches, because if you really think about it, any move that we make, I won't say any move because we have a history of bad ones, but most moves that we could make right now would be positive in the quarterback position, or, draft, or free agency.
I think you can only feel good about whatever decisions we make, whether it's you sign Kirk, whether it's you trade for Justin, whether you draft a quarterback at number 2, because honestly, I think what you're looking at is that the organization is saying, who do we want at quarterback?
Right.
And that's who they're going to select in whatever format they find, wherever they decide who is the day 1 starter next year. It's because they wanted that guy. And that's what I think is what we can get a lot of encouragement about.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we don't know we talk about what we want to do. We don't know what Chicago wants to do. You know what I mean? We don't know how they want to play this. You said Chicago would say no to the option. We don't know. We have to figure out where their head is at and what they're looking for, because I've heard just as much as I've heard Caleb Williams, I've also heard Marvin Harrison Jr. So,
right.
So we'll see. Yeah, he said 5th-year offer is still cheaper than top QB money. Yeah,
you're not paying the $50 million a year. Like you said, you're in that $25-30 million a year. But it comes back to, is Justin Fields worth $30 million a year?
Mm-hmm. Right. What would we be paying that top 2nd pick?
It's cheap. It's very cheap. Like maybe $1 million. They've changed the whole scales of it. So it's no longer like when Sam Bradford came out and he got $45 million of his contract. That's gone. It's a scale where you make just a little bit at a time, and then it jumps as you get closer to free agency.
Oh shoot!
That's what's So it's like you basically draft a quarterback at number 2, and you still have $80 million that you can spend on your roster.
Exactly.
Those are the dilemmas. This is why Adam Peters gets the big dollars.
Yep. So at the end of the day, it's who these guys are sold on. Is it Justin? Is it Caleb? Is it any of these? Who are they sold on? Who they want to work with? We'll be here for the next, month, 2 months, speculating, going back and forth, debating, trying to figure out who it is and what direction they're going to go to. But at the end of the day, until that pick is read and the player goes across the podium, we don't know.
Right.
And we can pick as much as we want to, but we've seen sometimes the very last minute, somebody comes off his yacht and picks Dwayne Haskins. So you never know, ladies and gentlemen. Right. Oh, man. But look, ladies and gentlemen, hey, that's it. That's it for us. Washington Football Weekly. We are back with this off season. It is upon us. Free agency's up soon. Ab was talking about the fifth-year options. We had to figure that stuff out. And then, obviously, we're getting closer toward the draft. So we're going to bring all this to you. Obviously, our coaches are set. Our identity is getting clearer. You know, we think we know which direction we're going in. But Will, I mean, I say this every year. This is the best time of the year. This is when we shine.
Yes. A lot to be excited about right now. A lot to be encouraged about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So look, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate y'all stopping by and being with us today. Again, check out our guys, Alex and Ab. They will be on tomorrow night around this same time, I believe 8:30, if not earlier. They did it earlier last week. But they'll be on around here. Giving their 2 cents. Last week, they talked about the potentially traded for Justin Fields, and they looked at which quarterbacks they were looking at. Now that we have a lot more of these coaches, then we can start to see the identity and the tendencies like they were looking at, and that will help us to make this picture a little clearer, little clearer. Oh man, good show for us. Yeah, very appreciate you, Ab. Absolutely. So for my guy, Will Kramer, it's your boy, Sean Spencer. We appreciate you, and we will definitely see y'all next time. Stay up, be cool, and not right hand, but left hand up, ladies and gentlemen.
Gibbs, you got a good chance. Let me tell you something about some good fans. Back in the day, RFK was our palace. If you don't know, you need to ask about us. Think we're gonna lose? Well, I can't believe you doubters had a whole